The station hummed around him. It was a constant, comforting drone. Sam always found it soothing. It meant everything was working. Then the humming stuttered. Silence descended, heavy and absolute. Sam's gut twisted. This was not normal. He checked his console. No alerts, no warnings. The silence stretched on, each tick of the clock an eternity. Then a whisper, faint, almost inaudible. It seemed to come from inside the walls. Sam shivered. He was alone on the station. Or was he? He shook his head, trying to dismiss the fear. It was probably just a comms glitch. Space stations were full of strange noises. He tried to convince himself, but the whisper lingered in his mind. Something wasn't right. He decided to check the comms system. It was on the other side of the station, down a long, sterile corridor. The silence followed him, pressing in on him. He walked faster, his heart pounding. The whisper came again, louder this time. It sent a chill down his spine. He reached the comms room and hurried inside. The room was dark, the only light coming from the blinking LEDs on the panels. He flipped the switch, but nothing happened. The power was still out. He swore under his breath. This was getting ridiculous. Then he saw it. A shadow, moving just outside the doorway. It flickered in and out of view, too quick to make out any details. He froze, his breath catching in his throat. The whisper came again, closer now. It seemed to be calling his name. "Hello?" Sam's voice echoed in the silence. There was no answer, only the faint hum of the station returning to life. The lights flickered back on, revealing an empty corridor. He was alone. He told himself it was just his imagination playing tricks. He had to stay calm. He took a deep breath and tried to ignore the lingering feeling of unease. He checked the comm system. Everything seemed to be in order. He ran a diagnostic, but it came back clean. Maybe it was just a power surge. He hoped that was all it was. But deep down, a part of him knew better. The whisper, the shadow, the overwhelming sense of dread. It was all too real. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Something was watching him. He decided to check the security footage. Maybe the cameras picked up something he missed. He made his way to the surveillance room, his unease growing with every step. The footage from the corridor was blurry, but he could make out the shadow. It was definitely there. He rewound the footage and watched again, his heart pounding in his chest. The shadow moved with an unnatural fluidity, as if it were gliding through the air. It stopped at the comms room door and seemed to listen. Then it vanished. Sam felt a cold shiver run down his spine. This was no ordinary glitch. Something was terribly wrong. He had to contact Earth, tell them what he'd seen. He turned to the comms console, but a voice stopped him in his tracks. Section 5. A Spectre in the vents. Looking for something, Sam? The voice was soft, raspy, and chillingly close. Sam whirled around, his heart in his throat. Standing in the doorway was a figure shrouded in shadow. He couldn't make out any features, only the faint outline of a human form. "Who are you?" Sam stammered, his voice trembling. "How did you get on the station?" The figure didn't answer. It just stood there, its presence radiating an icy dread. The air grew heavy, thick with an unseen menace. Then the figure spoke again, its voice a low, guttural growl. "This station is mine." The lights flickered once more, plunging the room into darkness. A high-pitched whine pierced the air, coming from the ventilation system. It sounded like screaming. Section 6. The Truth or a Trick of the Mind. Panic surged through Sam. He fumbled for his flashlight, the beam dancing wildly in the darkness. When he finally found the figure, it was gone, vanished without a trace. He was alone again, surrounded by the humming machinery of the station. He tried to rationalize what he'd seen and heard. Was he hallucinating? Was the isolation getting to him? He'd been alone on the station for too long. Maybe he was cracking under the pressure. He had to stay calm, had to think straight. But deep down, a primal fear gnawed at his sanity. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being hunted, that something malevolent was stalking him through the labyrinthine corridors of the station. He was a prisoner in his own metal coffin, hurtling through the vast emptiness of space. Section 7. Trapped in a nightmare. Days turned into nights. Or maybe it was nights turning into days. Time seemed to lose all meaning. The constant fear gnawed at him, amplified by the isolation. The whispers continued, taunting him, promising him a fate worse than death. He was trapped in a waking nightmare. He tried contacting Earth again, but the comms were still down. He was completely cut off, alone with whatever haunted him. He tried to lose himself in his work, to distract himself from the creeping terror, but it was no use. It was always there, lurking just beyond the edge of his vision. Sleep offered no escape. The nightmares were always the same. The shadowy figure, the chilling whispers, the feeling of icy dread. He would wake up gasping for air, his heart pounding, only to find himself alone in the cold, sterile confines of the station. Section 8. The Ultimate Sacrifice. One day he discovered a logbook. It belonged to the previous crew. They had experienced the same strange occurrences, the whispers, the shadows, the feeling of being watched. The last entry chilled him to the bone. It wants us to join it. It wants us to stay here. Forever. A horrifying realization dawned on him. He wasn't meant to escape. He was meant to become another victim, another lost soul trapped in this haunted vessel. He had to find a way to stop it. He had to protect others from suffering the same fate. There was only one option left, one desperate gamble. He had to destroy the station. He had to make sure it never reached another soul. His hand trembled as he reached for the control panel, his heart heavy with the weight of his decision. Section 9. Alone in the Void. He initiated the self-destruct sequence. Alarms blared, red lights flashed, and the station shuddered violently. He strapped himself into an escape pod, his heart pounding against his ribs. He could feel the entity's rage, its desperate attempt to stop him. The escape pod launched into the void, leaving behind the dying screams of the haunted station. He watched as it exploded in a fiery blaze, a silent scream against the backdrop of the cosmos. He was safe, but the experience had changed him. He would never be the same. He was alone now, adrift in the vast emptiness of space. But he was alive. He had survived. He had escaped the clutches of whatever haunted that station. But he knew deep down that he would never truly be free. Section 10. A Glimmer of Hope. Days later, a rescue team found him. He was weak, dehydrated, and still shaken to his core. They took him back to Earth, where he was subjected to countless tests and evaluations. No one believed his story. They dismissed it as space madness, a side effect of prolonged isolation. He tried to move on, to forget the horrors he had witnessed. But the nightmares persisted. The whispers followed him, echoing in the quiet corners of his mind. He couldn't escape the feeling that something was still out there, watching him, waiting. But amidst the fear and the uncertainty, there was a glimmer of hope. He had survived. He had faced his fears and emerged from the darkness. He was a survivor. And somehow that knowledge gave him the strength to keep going. Section 11. The Haunting Truth. He knew the truth, even if no one else believed him. Space was not empty. It was filled with secrets, with things man was not meant to know. And sometimes in the darkest corners of the universe, those secrets could find you. He looked up at the night sky, at the countless stars twinkling like distant diamonds. Somewhere out there, amidst the vastness of space, the wreckage of the station drifted silently. And with it, he knew, drifted the entity that had haunted him. He shivered, a cold dread gripping his heart. It was still out there, and he knew with chilling certainty that it would never stop searching. The experience had changed him, marked him forever. He was haunted not by a ghost, but by the chilling truth of what lurked in the shadows of space.